Hi, this is Coach World TV, and I'm Laurie Lawson. And my guest tonight is Sharon Sayler. Hey, Sharon.
Thanks for having me today.
Thank you for coming. I have to tell you, Sharon is based out of Oregon, on that state way up there, on the other side of the coast. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But we've been planning this for how long? Oh, my goodness.
6 months?
At least. And we had her on we had her on our Blog Talk radio show, Coach Chat, and we were just so fascinated. We said, please, we need you. Let me tell you what she does, if I can. I've been practicing. She's a business executive coach, right?
Right.
Okay. And she's a behavior communication specialist. What was hard about that?
There you go. Great practice.
Thank you. Yeah, it takes it. You just have to say it 5,000 times, and you might get it right. But what she specializes in is body language, and I'm going to be sitting like this for the rest of the night. I'm not going to move because I don't want to be critiqued, but she has this fantastic book out called What Your Body Says and How to Master the Message. And you'll also, she's going to give away 3 tips. So we got all kinds of stuff planned. But tell us, how did you get into this unique field? I think it's very unique, actually.
Well, you know, I'm just always fascinated. I'm what I call a lifelong learner. Absolutely get intrigued by things. And I happened to see a specialist, probably about 17 years ago, at a conference I was at. And what amazed me about him was he had me mesmerized from the first words out of his mouth. And at the time, I didn't think I was a very confident speaker. I'm actually, on the Myers-Briggs, I'm actually an I. I'm very introverted, very shy. You know, on that far end of the I.
Now she tells me. I hope I'm not going to have to carry this whole show. No, we've done nothing but talk since she got here, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yes, but I actually am an I on the Myers-Briggs. But you know, when you're passionate about something, it flows out. You can't stop it.
Yes.
And I'm passionate about nonverbal communication because when I was at this event, it changed my life. He was able to show how, you know, we're just this open book. It's all over our faces, our body language.
That's so frightening.
It is. And it's not as if we can read it, like it doesn't say something like, you know, she's from Oregon across our forehead. But what it says is people just know when they meet you. I was recently in France, and what happened was I tried to dress like them, because I don't speak a word of French, unfortunately. But I was trying to play and see what's happening, and so I had my black coat on, and I wore my black slacks, black sneakers, or black shoes, took off my white sneakers. By the way, that is a perfect nonverbal to say you're an American in France, is wear your white sneakers.
It's like in New York City to wear heels. It's like you don't belong in the city because you know you've got to do a lot of walking. Yeah, that's interesting, though.
Right. And I still am curious. You know, I talked to a few people, but they weren't quite sure what I was trying to ask. Because every time I walked into a shop, I opened the door and they go, hello. And I was like, this is great. But then you see someone else walk in and they go, bonjour. And I'm like, doggone it, I still don't look French.
Something told them that I'm not going to understand bonjour.
Absolutely. But anyway, I started studying it after I met this man. Michael Grinder is his name, and I met him and I studied with him for the last 17 years. We still have a close relationship where we actually sort of mentor each other now. Whenever he's filming or videotaping, I'll be in the back and making notes of certain nonverbals that he's using that might not be effective. And so it's just been a lot of fun studying communication, then going into studying hypnosis because of the language patterns are so critical. It's not only what we do with our body language, but it's also knowing the right words to use.
Oh, okay. So who would come to you? I wouldn't be smart enough to come to you. It's like, I go, well, I'm not doing something right, but I don't know. I wouldn't think to look you up. Who would think to look you up?
A lot of people, well, word of mouth for sure, but a lot of people come to me, they might have heard from their boss, you're not leadership material, or they want to look more confident. Maybe they want to be a public speaker, and they know they're going, you know, I've tried it, and I maybe videotape myself, and I just don't like how I look. So people that just want to be seen as more competent, confident, and influential. A lot of times people say, you know, I'm head of a committee and I just can't get people to listen to me. Is it something I'm doing? Or usually it's a combination of what we're doing and what we're saying.
So it's not necessary. I mean, if they've made it, if you call yourself no. You call yourself a leadership business coach.
Right, yes.
So if they made it so far, then obviously what they want to do is hone and refine, or
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
it. So
Yeah,
it's not they're totally inoperable as a human being, but it's like they want to refine.
Usually we all have a great set of skills, and it's always just about adding on to those, maybe just tweaking a little bit to get a little more confident, get a little more refinement, or sometimes maybe the skills that got us here aren't going to get us to the next level of leadership, so we have to add on.
That's interesting. Okay, you've peaked down until you refine a little bit. Oh, okay. All right. So I asked Sharon. I said, "Well, what do you think is the biggest mistake or the biggest miscommunication thing that people do?" And she just floored me with the answer. So, what do you think?
Oh, I love this one because it absolutely will change people's views of you almost instantly, and that's our breathing.
Go figure.
Yeah, oftentimes, as a culture, here, especially here in the States, but I see it in Western Europe and Canada too, is we breathe really high. And I'll just demonstrate to the extreme. And that's like, we just start breathing high, which makes us talk rapidly. And what happens is we start sort of sounding gaspy. And I'm sure as you're watching this, your metabolism is probably starting to rise.
It's making everybody very nervous, yes.
Absolutely. And that's what it does. But what it also does is it activates the other person, the listener's fight or flight mechanism, which is that reptilian part of our brain called the amygdala. And someone, when they watch you breathing high or hear you breathing high, they begin to look around, because this part of our brain from ancient days, if someone was breathing high, they were usually, being chased by a bear or something. There was danger.
Serious, yeah.
Right. And now our breathing high is due to a stressful life. A lot of adrenaline is activated in us. And what happens is it just becomes a habit, a very bad habit, but it becomes a habit.
Now, is that nervousness, or is it just we want to get our thoughts out, or a little bit of everything?
It's really just a habit, I've noticed. Sometimes it's nervousness if we're going to put ourselves into a new situation. But oftentimes, just as a culture, we're used to breathing here. And I notice it a lot with women. If you breathe naturally, you get kind of a tummy.
Oh,
and
God forbid. Yeah. I'd rather strangle, but no thanks.
Well, it's actually easier to coach men on how to breathe correctly, which is, full, and the rib cage expands when we breathe completely and fully, because women don't want their tummy going in and out. So it's actually easier to coach men on breathing techniques. But breathing is so critical, not only to making sure we're not activating people's fight or flight mechanism, but more oxygen to the brain. We can think clearer. Our face looks perkier when we have oxygen to the brain. We're not turning blue and passing out.
Right.
And the cool thing about it is when we're breathing, we're less likely to use ah, and
Really? Oh,
Absolutely.
That's worth its weight in gold in a tip. Oh my gosh, really? Remember Caroline Kennedy when she ran?
Yes.
You must have gone crazy. It was, and she can speak. She has a lot of things to say, but every other word was and I didn't think there was any way to correct that. So you're saying deep breath, and there's no
Absolutely, a deep breath. And people want us to succeed. They really do. And so I always say it's okay to do a deep breath. Even an audible sigh like that was to reset, reboot the old brain. And what it will do, once we get oxygen, see an and an ah or an exhale, and that forces us to breathe. So our brain starts adding these crazy little filler words to say, okay, time to breathe. And oftentimes what happens is then we're not pausing. And the pause is where people catch up with what you're saying. And it's also where you look the most intelligent.
Oh, okay. So if you talk nonstop rapidly, you're not giving people time to digest whatever you're saying or even hear what you're saying, I would think.
Yes.
That is so valuable. I don't think I do a lot, but then I notice sometimes when I'm not expecting to speak, then suddenly it's like, oh, shut up, don't say that, and then you're conscious and you say it again. So that is great. Yeah, and you're right, Americans don't know how to breathe. That's the first thing they'll tell you in an exercise class, in public speaking classes. It's like, your stomach's supposed to go out, and then you bring it back in. And,
Your rib cage is supposed to expand.
It works so much better that way.
And they always say in public speaking, when I give a lot of speeches, they say, oh, you look so calm and cool. But as we were talking beforehand, no, I'm always nervous. But it's about getting those butterflies flying in formation.
I love that. Straighten up and fly right, butterflies.
And the way you do that is by monitoring your breathing.
Wow. And I guess, let me tell you, I have seen Sharon's book, and I'm fortunate, and you can see it too. You can see it on Amazon, you can see it in bookstores, and we'll in her website. I'll bet it's on there too.
Absolutely.
But she has, not only does she tell you stances and what certain hand things mean, but she has all these cool charts, and it's like, if you do this, it means it, and if you do that, it means, and then she really just tells you how you're going to come across. Because I noticed, I said today, and I wish she'd told me before I did that, but when we first met, because we've been talking a lot, she was, you can sum up somebody in their handshake, and I'm going, oh, I didn't do it right. So tell us about that, because there's two categories, and I thought that was fascinating, a little disappointing, but okay.
Well, I developed it because as coaches, we're familiar with all sorts of assessments, Myers-Briggs, DISC, everything. But you can't do those on the fly, really, very easily.
And if I always said, Myers-Briggs is great, but you need to wear it on your forehead, because I am not going to remember it. So just lay it out there with your arm.
Right. But the best way to build rapport is people want to know, are you like them? Are you familiar to them? And that's how you build rapport. And the quickest way to do it that I have found is having people that I group, either you're community minded or you're productivity minded. And there's certain cues that we can watch for with someone.
Well, explain that, because I didn't really get it. What is community and what's productivity? I got it now.
Okay, community-minded people, I always like to say, they're the ones that bring the cupcakes to the birthday party at the office. And they're all about, they value morale, they value teamwork. They're the ones in the team meeting that will say, oh, we can't move forward, we can't make that decision because John and Susan aren't here. They're also the ones that make sure that everybody's okay and that the whole team is flowing together. And when there's conflict, they tend to sort of want to regroup the whole team. They're also talk a lot with an upward palm gesture. That's very community-minded. It's very inclusive to talk with an upward palm gesture.
Yes.
You'll see speakers, welcome everyone. They do that. So that's very inclusive. So, and then a productivity person, on the other hand, they value things like getting the job done. They value timeliness. They value direct statements. And, they're fine if you're in a team meeting and John and Susan aren't there, but, it's time to make the decision. They're the ones that say, sorry, we're just going to have to move forward without John and Susan. Mm-hmm. So that's productivity people. And you can kind of begin to say, oh yeah, I recognize from my team, John, and I recognize Susan over here.
The cupcake lady,
yeah. The cupcake lady. And so that's how I sort of tend to group two main groups of people. Mm-hmm. I work a lot with executives in business, and I have to know how to build rapport with them quickly. And so through a handshake, you can tell. This comes from the work of Dr. John Kappas on emotional suggestibility. He was a very famous hypnotist, and he wanted to find out, how do I tap the unconscious mind very quickly? And so emotionally suggestible. There are some nonverbals that let you know very quickly how emotionally suggestible someone is. And I want to make sure that we talk about that as not a bad word, being emotionally suggestible. I want to make sure that's not a negative label. It's just...
Well, first of all, when you say hypnotist, everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to bark like a dog. So so we're going to take that out totally. Right. And then emotionally suggestible would mean...
Well, it's just a matter of, do they want to see you as a human first and an expert later, or do they want to see you as an expert first and a human later? See, someone who's community-minded, they really want to know about you. They want to know, what you value and the core you.
Kind of, is she like me, and does she have the same values?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
And then know about your expertise, and okay, we'll work from your expertise. Where a productivity person, they really want to know, are you an expert? Can you get this job done? And oh, yes, by the way, you're human. How nice.
But when will this be done? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so from a handshake, if we could just shake hands really quickly.
I'm going to do it right this time now.
And so in this case, we wanted first, when they first grab the hand, we want to see where they do eye contact. Now you look down.
I just looked down, yeah.
Okay, that's very community-minded. That's the person where I would go, well, on a bell curve, nobody is 100% either way. I would tend to start more about who I am. Maybe start with a story or a question of, so tell me a little bit about yourself. That's a very friendly, human kind of question to ask. Now, if you were to make very direct eye contact with me and not look down, no touching, nothing like this, then you tend to be more productivity minded. And what you want to do is start with a question, something. So what brought you here? That's very business oriented, down to it. Let's get our goals. And both of those questions build rapport. Sometimes people say, well, what if I get it wrong? Trust me, you can't get it wrong. First, nobody knows you're doing it. Well, of course, unless you all are watching this. Then
now everybody's clued in, right? But
you'll all be checking for emotional suggestibility or wanting to know, do they want to know you as a human being first? But you can't get it wrong. It's about 85% accurate. So every so often you might misjudge. But really, if you meet someone the first time and you say, so tell me about yourself, and they're really goal-oriented, they're not going to say, look, I'm goal-oriented, ask another question.
You might go, look, I'm the director and I've got a deadline, okay? We'll talk later.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So are those the only two categories that people, I love it, instant rapport. I mean, I can see the benefit rather than feeling around and seeing what's going to work.
Right.
You kind of know this is the approach I take, and that's so helpful. Are there other categories, or is it just those two, or there's more?
Well, those are the two that I work with quickly to just make a snap judgment of what is the next thing out of my mouth.
Okay. Okay.
We don't have a lot of time to go through a lot, but there's everything from how far productivity oriented they are. We want to also understand learning styles is important. Once I talk to someone for just a couple of minutes, there's certain nonverbal behaviors people do that tell me about their learning styles.
Really?
Whether a visual, auditory, kinesthetic, auditory, digital.
You can do that just by talking.
Just by watching body
Watching
language.
them. Okay.
Right.
Wow. That's got to be helpful too. Yeah.
Visual learners tend to sit up very straight. They tend to sit on the 2/3 of their seat, so they rarely touch the back of the seat. That's very rare.
I think that's me.
They're also very put together. They always look color coordinated, and they sit very still and very upright. And oftentimes they'll hear things like, oh, you're judgmental, you're aloof. And they'll come and they say, I'm not, I'm really a nice person. I don't get it. I'm not judgmental. And I'm taking one look at how they're sitting and going, you're a visual learner. And then we teach them some ways that they can understand that they can still take little snapshots. That's how visual learners code their memories, like taking little pictures as they go. And so we teach them some ways to not look judgmental, not look aloof, and still satisfy their learning style. Now, someone who's kinesthetic would be a little more laid back, a little more comfortable in the chair, tend to slouch a little bit. They also tend to be a little mismatched at times or a little rumply because it's all about here and now. Visual learner people, they tend to understand and sometimes spend time in the past.
Sequential.
Yeah. And they go all the way to the future. But a kinesthetic person, really, they understand the future, they understand the past, but they're really about the here and now. And it's interesting because they make fabulous first responders. They're so understanding of their body and where it is in time and space that they make excellent first responders like firefighters and EMTs.
Oh, that's good to know.
Right.
Oh, there's so much I want to ask you. Okay. Well, first of all, tell us what you have for us. It's free.
Okay.
You have to go to Sharon Sayler.com, and you can see how she spells her name at the top of the screen. And it's .com/
Coach TV.
that's us.
Absolutely.
And tell us what we're going to find there. It's going to be free and cool.
Absolutely. I put together just for you guys, for
Thank
Coach
you.
World TV, a wonderful little ebook. I think it's about 35 pages long.
Wow.
On the three
Wow.
biggest body language mistakes and how to avoid them. So I give you the mistake and then what to do to correct it if you're doing it, or understand what the meaning of, what message that is sending to the other people, as well as a 20-minute audio interview I did with my good friend Wayne Kelly. He interviews me and asks me all sorts of questions that I'll say just sort of popped into his mind about after you'd read the ebook. So I'm hoping it covers a lot of the common questions that might come up from the ebook as well.
Fantastic. All right, let me give you that again. SharonSayler.com/Coach TV.
Coach TV.
Fantastic. I'm there as soon as the show is over.
Well, I've got a little special bonus in there,
Oh,
too.
what?
I put together a little PDF just for you guys about the idea of a checklist of community, what to look for in a community person, the kinds of things you'll see, the less direct eye contact. And then on the other side, contrasting, is the productivity things you'll see, where it says they make direct statements, they have more direct eye contact. So you can sort of see the scale. Now, understanding in this little worksheet, this little checklist I put together, it talks about the extremes. You know, who's here and who's here. And that's what I said. We're never 100% one or the other. In all my years of doing this, I haven't seen just someone who's completely mission-driven or completely community-minded. And sometimes some people might be saying, I do a little bit of both. It can be contextual. Sometimes I see people who are very productivity-minded at work actually let down and want to be the person who brings cupcakes to the school party or something. So it can be contextual as well.
Well, that brings me to the next question. And it's like, okay, if you've got a lifelong habit, and I think we were talking about like hypnosis, where sometimes you're not even aware you have the lifelong habit, and God only knows where you got the message from. Could be some warped babysitter you had at age 2, but it can be, you can correct these things, even if they're so ingrained. I mean, how do you, when people come to you, what do you do? How do you smack them? What do you do? Cut it out.
I'm all
Electric
about
prod.
influence. I'm all about influence instead of using power. And it's interesting to me because once we do a behavior or have an experience of successfully doing the behavior, so we'll say this particular behavior isn't useful for us anymore. We develop behaviors because they have served us at some time, whether it was to protect us from the schoolyard bully when we're 6. You know, we don't know, but they're not useful now for whatever reason. So we look at them and we say, okay, that tool is still useful. We don't want to extinguish it. But what other tools can we add to the toolbox so when we know we come to this new situation, we can just pull out a different tool? And so we always add new behaviors. And what I like to say is we just continue to adapt. And yes, you can extinguish you can file old behaviors away instead of extinguish them. What you want to do is just have the experience. I encourage them as a coach, showing them that it's not fear. Oftentimes, you know, unless a bear is chasing you, like we were talking about from ancient times, you know, really it's just being unfamiliar and understanding, okay, how can we make it more familiar before you have to have the experience? So things like role play, videotape, sometimes just talking about, okay, choose something from your past where you were very successful. Everybody can come up with those. And we say, what skills can we take from there and put over here into the new experience and to develop the new behavior? And oftentimes people get this very quickly. And what happens is, so they go and they do the new behavior. And they're like, oh my gosh, I get emails all the time. It's like, this works. I'm like, well, that was the idea.
I know.
And, but what's so interesting is then sometimes if it's a really, maybe we'll say it's a habit you're trying to just sort of put away. And sometimes that unconscious mind, that little gremlin in your head will be going, oh, well, you know, it worked that first time, but that was just a fluke. That you know, yeah. So I encourage you to keep doing it, keep practicing. And the more you practice, the more positive results you get. And pretty soon, the unconscious mind, the thoughts and the feelings, they automatically change. The more positive feedback we get, we're going, this works, I like it, I'll keep it up.
Okay.
And so no longer can those thoughts and feelings that were the old us, they just can't survive anymore.
Cool. And I said to her, I said, well, okay, if somebody comes in and they've got the most horrendous habit in the world, is that what you're going to work on first? And she said, yes. I said, so it's going to take them longer. And ironically, she said,
No.
go, huh? How come? That doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. We talk about these behaviors, and once we start having these positive responses back, we get the feedback button. It happens automatically. It's so cool. It's one of the quickest ways to change. Sometimes people say, oh, mindset is important. And I say, yes, mindset is important. But too often our mind can talk us out of it. Oh, I need just one more chapter in the book. I need to find just one more instruction, or, lose 1 pound, or whatever it is. And then our mind talks us out of it. I say, just go have the experience. And once you have the experience,
then your mind will
Absolutely.
booster it. If there is such a word.
It will support it.
Yeah, that's the word. Whatever. So, okay, you can see we have very little time left. We're going to have you have to let me know when you come back, and we'll just have Sharon Sayler Part 2.
Okay.
But is there a difference between men and women in nonverbal communication? And what is the difference between men and women?
Well, a couple
is it
of
universal?
things. Well, some are universal, but a couple of things really come to mind. And the one I would love to talk about first is hand gestures. Most universally is the upward palm gesture. It's all about building rapport, asking questions, keeping the conversation flowing is very nice. This is where we get into trouble, the sideward hand gesture. Now, that's not the hatchet, that's about power, but just a side hand gesture. That says it's serious or I'm serious. And then the down palm gesture says, I'm serious and not open to negotiation. I find women have a really hard time with this. They sort of like
It doesn't even seem normal to me like that. No. No.
It is, but if you notice, now that you're aware of it, keep your eyes
Watch
open and
men.
see how many men can do a downward palm gesture. So what happens is women are doing this and they're talking to a man, and the man's continuing to debate. And in the woman's mind, she's going, I'm saying no. Why is he continuing to debate? Because he says, I'm serious, but I'm open to debate.
Bug me.
Turn the hand down. That says, I'm not open to negotiation.
Fantastic. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and you can make yourself crazy. Her book is fantastic. Check it out, What Your Body Says and How to Master the Message. All I can say is thank you so much. It has been so enjoyable. I know you've got tons of other things to check out her website, and let's go get all the free stuff.
Absolutely.
And then if you have any questions, I'll bet you can find her on SharonSayler.com. So thank you so much, Sharon. It has been amazingly informative.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.